Hey y'all, good morning. I say good morning, it's actually it's morning for me, but I slept in late today, so but I hope you're doing good. And I'm going unscripted today. I actually have my my journal with me, but I didn't take the time to write anything down, so we'll see how it goes. But here's what came to me this morning. So when I was little, my parents would share, little snippets with me from different, writers and poets and artists and people that were influential in their life, right? Just little excerpts from their writings or whatever, things that stuck with them in their memory, and they would just quote those to me, here and there, just sort of like as prompts for discussion and especially, I think, just to expand my mind, and I'm grateful for that. And so one of those things they shared with me was from a poem from William Blake, and the part that they shared, and I'm going to quote it as I remember it, so I think it's accurate. It may be a little bit off, but it says something like, these 5 windows of the soul distort the heavens from pole to pole. They teach us to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye. And so I think that this is one of those things that's significant because it can be true at multiple levels, right? So on one hand, you can take it just very actual, material, physical in as far as its meaning, that because we know for sure, but is anything really ever for sure? Science says that different species of animals have the capacity to detect different, like a different color spectrum. And so I can't remember exactly. I think maybe it was hummingbirds, and it's kind of like, how do they know that? But that's what they say. So there are, and I might be wrong with it being hummingbirds, but and I think they say that dogs have, a more limited color spectrum, something with their receptors. I think they can examine, biologically the actual visual receptors, and they make the determination based off that, right? So excuse me, got some allergies going on too. Normally it's late summer allergies, and this year it's early summer allergies, so kind of a bummer, but again, I hope you're doing well. Water is always helpful. But so my point here is that little snippet from that poem from William Blake can absolutely be taken as materially, that indeed we can only perceive our physical reality with the senses we have. I mean, what if we were to have 6 or 7 or 8 senses? What more could there be out there that we are not even able to perceive? Just kind of interesting and fun. I like to think like that. Expansive, right, in my thinking, not limited. But the point here that I'm trying to get to is, what if we take the same concepts in that little snippet from the poem and apply it to more than the physical reality? Okay, especially after you have been greatly impacted from some really hard, tough, bad, evil experiences in life, right? And typically these experiences are relational. They involve other people, right? And so this is what came to me just for myself in my own personal life, and I wanted to share with you all. I think that when you experience certain things in life that are extremely impactful, and they kind of like crack open these old paradigms you've operated with your whole life, and you realize that there was more than what meets the eye to to things, to people, you know, people with hidden dark intentions, you know. I don't want to move forward in my life with this experience or these experiences, if there's been multiple in your life. I don't want them to be hanging over my life like a dark cloud, kind of just permeating literally every aspect of my present experience. And if we're not careful, I think that can happen. And I think that, you know, when that starts when it starts to feel that way, I think that we need to be ready and prepared to be able to consciously shift out of that mindset and say, no, the past is not going to steal my present and my future from me. You know what I mean? But I think it has to be a decision we make. And I think it has to be conscious effort. And I think that the more prepared you are to be able to tackle that when the cloud starts to come into your present moment, because see, here's what happens. Well, let me back up. I think that the more prepared you are when this happens, the quicker you'll be able to consciously shift out of it. You see what I'm saying? So, and here's how I see this happening. I know I'm speaking very metaphorical, but it's hard. You know, these things are hard to put into just straightforward terms sometimes, you know? And that's why I think the creative, the imaginative approach to communication, whether it's in the visual arts or music or whatever it is, sometimes it kind of helps to fill in those communication gaps where we just don't have the words for things, you know what I mean? But when these dark clouds from our past experiences start to permeate our current reality, influence our current reality, I say that, and I see that as this experience through the lens of that poem I shared. We begin when the cloud comes over, okay? We begin to see our reality and everyone in it with the eyes of being a victim. And I hate to almost use that word because it doesn't really do this whole situation justice. It's kind of like part of it, but it's not the totality of it. Does that make sense? But I'm still kind of feeling my way through it. And trying to you know, find the best way to express this, right? Because the truth is, if you were abused, if you were manipulated or conned or whatever, you were a victim. But I'm going to try and keep it as were or was a victim in the past. And not that is something that I am attaching to, right? I'm going to practice non-attachment, right? And there's all kind of techniques for that. Stoicism, where you allow a little space. Just so many different tactics to try to not emotionally and even intellectually hook into this past experience and carry it with you like baggage. And I think that that's why, you know, Jesus said, you know, through the Christian lens, which we can learn from even if you're not a Christian, I believe. You know, he says, you know, his yoke is light. And the point is to lay it down. But you can't totally lay it down because you have a memory. That's how we're made. We're made that way. It's part of our brains. It's part of our mind. And so this is where it has to become, we have to utilize the gift of free will. Right? And the Bible says that we won't be given anything that we can't handle. And I know a lot of us have thought about that verse and thought, I don't know about that, you know, because sometimes things absolutely seem too much to handle, overwhelming. But just go with me. Get your coffee or whatever it is you like to drink, and let's just, you know, remember. I think that if you have been abused or conned or whatever, it kind of kicks you into this hypervigilant, defensive, reactive kind of mode. All of us, and that's protective. It's instinctual. So don't beat yourself up for that. We're made to be that way, to literally react quickly to save our life. It's just written in our code, in our DNA. It's part of the human design. Yeah, the human design, which is really God's design for us, right? When you're learning all these different things, you're trying on different lenses and different perspectives, I think it's so important to really take into consideration all the ways that we judge ourselves, when in reality a lot of aspects of ourselves are just part of being a human being, you know. And what I'm learning is that you can take a quality that's typical human behavior, and maybe more so in some people and less so in others, but you can take a human behavior and it can be neutral, truly. But it's almost like you don't ever really experience it or witness it in another person, or experience it firsthand, either way, as neutral. It's kind of like this quality is just part of the human experience and God's design. But, you know, in some people it's harnessed and it's utilized in a healthy and good way, this quality, whatever it is. And maybe I'll come up with an example in a minute. I'll try. And then in other people, they have the same quality, but it's corrupted. But yet it's very active in their life, okay? And it doesn't have to be this person versus this person. It can all be within one person in different stages of their life, periods of their life, whatever, right? So, I got this book, and it's really interesting, and it's about astrology, right? Not astronomy. I've had to teach myself the difference. But astrology. So years and years ago, y'all, I was at a Waffle House with my mom, and this waitress came up to our table, and she was really interesting. And I'm sure she was trying to come up with creative ways to, you know, get a bigger tip, and that's fine, you know. If you can entertain someone or give them a piece of advice or whatever, and that's how you make your living, you know, great. So she was a really interesting person, and she was asking about our birthdays and stuff like that. And this woman came back with our food, and she read us like a book, like that old saying, like legit, literally. She was the most accurate and detailed, I don't know what you call it, not astrologer, I guess, or psychic, but it's like a person who deals with horoscopes. And you can read horoscopes for yourself. They're just, you know, I think published a lot of times for fun in newspapers or whatever. And it's kind of like you can relate to it and resonate with it. And I think sometimes it just is helpful to give you a different lens to view your life. You know, it doesn't have to be, what's the word I want to use? There's a word. I'll drop it down here when I think of it later. But it doesn't have to be, you know, anti-religious, all this stuff, in my opinion. It depends on the person's intention and how they use this stuff. But I think all this kind of stuff, like horoscopes and all, they can be utilized. Again, anything can be, almost anything, maybe not literally anything, but many things can be, you know, harnessed and utilized in a good way, or corrupted and used in a, you know, a malicious way. But that's how I view this kind of stuff, like astrology. I think that astrology can provide a lens for all of us to just examine our own life, and whatever we discover, you know, we use that for growth. And so I'm going to be learning about it, and I'm excited about it. And so yeah, because I think that, you know, I have intentions to, you know, help others at some point, you know, I guess more like in my 3D world. And it's not to say I would cut this off because I enjoy this too. But just any kind of avenue I can provide people to self-examine and to do so in a gentle way, in a non-judgmental way, for the purposes of healing and growth. Because that's I've been blessed with that in my life. People, I feel like God put in my life to help me along my path, right? And so, but one of the qualities that was brought up in that book, I've recently started on astrology, to just kind of make a long story short, as my uncle says, is the quality that, you know, certain sun signs or whatever can have. And that is the quality of like a take charge or a leadership quality, right? In a healthy way, if a person has this kind of characteristic, it means that they can be someone who can just be a good leader. They can see the bigger picture, maybe. They can see all the moving parts, and they can utilize that and to organize and structure and restructure and make, like, for example, in, you know, business, maybe make things, you know, easier on everybody, you know, all the employees at a place or whatever. So they can add to and benefit other people's lives if this quality is harnessed and utilized in the right way. Then on the other side, a person can have this quality of like a leadership type spirit, but it can be corrupted and come off as controlling. You see what I'm saying? And I think that even within the same person, it can kind of fluctuate too. But I think that as we study qualities, again, these are just all different lenses we can use to self-examine, and also to examine the people that maybe are coming into our life. A new person that you're kind of, you know, you're sitting down with and you're trying to figure out, you know, is this someone that I want in my inner circle or whatever it is. And so, but I think it's important to understand that we are not robots. We are, we're very complex. And because of that, I think it's extremely important to give ourselves and others grace. And, but we need to know where to draw the line. And that's why it gets, I have had to, in my studies, come to a place of recognizing the difference in healthy versus unhealthy, because we all have a range of emotions, right? I think a healthy person has a range of emotions, and they're capable of feeling them and expressing them and all that. That's good, right? As long as a person has self-awareness and self-restraint, which is really important. The difference, that where you draw the line, this is the conclusion I've come to, right? Is deception. Deception. Because we could nitpick each other and ourselves just forever and ever till the cows come home, you know, till, you know, just endlessly, right? But the truth is, and I think that's why, you know, again, to draw upon a Christian reference, you know, Jesus said, you know, let the first without sin, you know, throw the first stone. And so nobody needs to be throwing stones. You know what I mean? Because none of us are perfect. But I think perfection is a lie anyway. I mean, if you look in nature, I mean, you can find imperfections everywhere. And that's what makes it beautiful, really. You know, think about when you're walking down the beach and you're collecting shells, you know. If you got 500 that are the same, well, you know, through the definition of limited, by the way, perception of perfection, which is the human definition, I feel like, of perfection. Maybe, you know, based on the ratio, it's like, well, those would be considered perfect if they're all, you know, without flaws and the same. But see, if you found a shell that did have a flaw in it, then it would be considered imperfect, right? But only as it's compared to, you know, all the others. But let's just say that one shell you found that is flawed or imperfect was actually the norm. If you flip-flop it, and that was the one that was the majority, well, then we would say that's the the baseline normal, right? And then that would become the bar that everything else is judged against, and then maybe the perfect shells, in the first scenario would be the imperfect ones. So it's all about perception. It really is. And two, as we know, I specifically use the seashell reference because isn't it cool when you find one that's different? Those are not the kind you throw back. Those are the ones that are like a treasure. You know what I mean? Put them in your treasure chest. You keep it. They're special. And so why don't we treat ourselves the same way? I don't know why there's such a drive to conform. And but anyway, it's going through hard times in life, especially life-altering hard times, as we are forever changed in how we view things. I just encourage you to view this as an opportunity to utilize your free will and consciously see this as an opportunity to approach the way you do life going forward as a blank canvas. And if you're a spiritual person, yeah, you may, have the belief that God is in control. I do. I believe that. I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't. To each his own. I totally believe in the whole live and let live, There's no judgment there. But I do. I believe that God is in control. But the way I view what I'm talking about is like God's handing you the paintbrush. Maybe he's supplying the color spectrum that you get to work with, but he's handing you the paintbrush. So I just encourage you, I hope you got something out of this extremely symbolic and metaphorical, not a rant, but ramble, I guess. I really do. I hope you got something out of it. But just stay encouraged. I just encourage you to flow with it, go with the flow. Don't latch on to anything. When you recognize this dark cloud popping up from the past, get your paintbrush out. Get your camera out. You know what I mean? So there's all kind of different techniques that we can journal on, think about, to ultimately get to that goal that was a beautiful reference in the William Blake poem, which is to see through and not with the eye. So we can take these hard experiences and instead of seeing through, instead of seeing with them, in other words, they're clouding everything we see, we can see through them. They're there. They'll always be with us. You can't totally shake it off. It has changed you. But I think that's for a reason. I think that it serves a purpose to protect you going forward. And maybe to give you the spiritual assignment of helping to teach others and to comfort others. And so it's there. But you don't have to live and see with it. You can live and see through it. And that just makes you wiser, And so, and I think also it's good, when you're, like I said, you're not just navigating your present reality, but you're thinking about your future reality, and when you're meeting new people, So that line, before I cut this off, that line that you draw, I mentioned it as being deception, right? That's what it is for me. I'm reminded of this back when I was managing. I was in a management position, and I interviewed this person, and she was very impressive. And she said in the interview, she said, I don't. How did she put it?
She's like, I can't stand gossip. I don't have anything to do with that. And, you know, in any kind of big organization, there's going to be cliques. You know, it's like when you're in school, you hope that when you grow up, I talk with my friend about this all the time. Well, you know, you hope that when you grow up and you get out of school, you know, out into the real world, that there won't be that kind of stuff, like bullying and cliques and just random immature stuff like that, right? But, yeah. We all know that doesn't go away with some people. But so in organizations, to hear someone want to come into the organization claiming that they don't, you know, get involved in that kind of stuff, that's great. You know, it sounds good. But this very person wound up being, you know, the source of issues for some time, and stirring up trouble, you know, and if there was trouble stirred up somewhere else, this person would absolutely just involve themselves and stir the pot. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to have a keen, or you have to cultivate and develop and use what you've learned to do so, a keen sense of discernment to be able to see who's who claims one thing but does another. It's deception. And and to be able to differentiate. And it takes time sometimes. That's why, you know, I've said many times, I don't believe in making assumptions. An assumption, when I say that, my definition of that, or perception of that, is just a quick judgment. And I think that, you know, it's we don't need to get overly confident in our ability to discern. I think that just giving things time, and but I think the older is good. But I think the older you get, and the more you refine your discernment, the quicker the process will go. You know. But I still think to protect yourself, you need to always admit that there are still things that you don't know. Again, because you do have limitations, you know, not just physically with our senses, you know, but mentally. So, yeah, so just keep that in mind as far as protecting yourself, but you don't have to carry around the past like a heavy burden either. So just consider looking through it for the purpose of discernment. Because look, I think that, you know, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within. I don't believe that means that it's not without and actual and real. I think that it's both. Personally, I do. And so I think that that's all the difference. That it doesn't mean you're turning a blind eye to the corruption in the world. You know, it's kind of like, for a long time, I felt like, this was supposed to be a short video, y'all. But for a long time, I felt like people who were just very, very overly positive were, is the word jaded? I don't even know what that means. But they were like lying to themselves, and they were not, you know, really being honest about reality, because reality can be very, very evil and harsh and everything, right? And it's almost like, I think that in our attempts, this is like a subconscious process I think we all engage in our attempts to live aligned with truth, we might unconsciously or subconsciously believe that if we embrace joy, then that equates to denying the truth of all the corruption in the world and the evil in the world. You know, it's almost like we think that in order to acknowledge that there's evil in the world, we have to live like that all the time, with our mindset and our approach to life in every aspect. It's almost like that we might equate that to being a truthful person, and we might also, as an extension, equate being happy as living delusionally. And I don't think that's the case. I don't. I think it's knowing your limitation. Do people with good hearts wish they could do something about all the bad in the world? Sure. Realistically, can you go out there and fix it all? I don't think so. I think you can make an impact. See, we got to get out of this extremist mindset. We got to get out of black and white thinking. Like, either I can't do anything about it, so oh well, or, you know, something has to be done, and it's just, you know, you're deluding yourself into thinking that you have all this power to fix it all when you don't. And so it's like, just do what you can, you know, and understand that we do have limitations, and it's okay to embrace happiness. That doesn't mean that you are turning a blind eye to the bad stuff in the world. And even if it's within your own personal world, even if there's someone who maybe you met and you're like, I don't know about this person, you know, as far as the deception-ometer, you know, you're still trying to figure them out. You can still be on guard and be happy. You know, it's kind of like, I've said before that I think that the truth, the greater truth of reality, is a paradox. It's not either or, it's both and. Well, what if we embrace that within our world? You know what I mean? Our life. That we can be expanded enough to hold space, which was a concept I learned years ago from my good friend Carly, who changed my life forever for the good. She was one of the angels I feel like God put in my life. But what if we expanded our mind enough to be able to hold space for all the good and the bad that exists in the world? It doesn't mean you're accepting it. It just means you're acknowledging it, but you're not going to forego being happy. You know what I mean? So, but just keeping in mind that line, you know, as being one based on truth and deception. Because to me, I don't see any other way of that being anything other than a choice for a person, you know? So, I hope this has given you a lot to think about. I hope that while it probably came across as heavy topic, I certainly didn't mean for it to. This is what I felt called to share today, and I hope that it was beneficial to you in some way. Maybe gave you some things to journal on and think about. So embrace even the small moments that make you smile or make you laugh. Just, those are good to latch on to, carry with you. You know, if you're going to carry anything with you, carry those things with you. And just try to lay down judgment, and just know that the hard things will pass, and just use them, alchemize them to help refine and sharpen your discernment to protect you, right? So thank you again. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.